which brings us to our special guest today, actress and activist Alexandra Paul.
I know her. She was on Baywatch.
She certainly was. She's a longtime EV advocate. Alexandra protested the fact that General Motors pulled back the EV1 in order to have the vehicle destroyed. Alexandra appears in the movie Who Killed the Electric Car and was arrested in a protest that attempted to block GM car carriers that were about to take the remaining EV1 cars off to be crushed.
Whew, Alexandra. We are so excited to have you on the podcast today. Good to see you. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, I'm so happy, and congratulations on the podcast. I've seen it and I'm a fan.
Oh, yay. We like to hear that. Before we get into EVs, I have to ask, you've been acting for a hot minute. You've done some fabulous work. How did you get into acting?
I got into acting because I was modeling first in New York City, and a TV movie back then in 1981, there were ABC and CBS TV movies of the week. I'm dating myself, but yes, I was 18 and I auditioned as a model for a TV movie that was about models. And so they were looking for an unknown girl to play the lead, and I was the lucky girl chosen to move to LA and shoot this TV movie, which did really well. It was called Paper Dolls. And it also starred Daryl Hannah. And it was one of the top 5 TV movies of that year, which was a big deal. And so that helped me so much get into the business.
Oh, for sure. And a lot of people obviously know you from your days on Baywatch. But you've done so many other things, and you've had this incredible career acting. That's not even talking about your journey with electric vehicles. So let's talk about that a little bit. Why EVs, and what were some of your first electric vehicles?
Oh my gosh. Okay, so I came to the electric vehicle world as an environmentalist. A lot of the early adopters were people who either were really technical whizzes and very interested in the technology, or they wanted to be first on the block. I didn't care about either of those things. I didn't care about cars at all. I was an environmentalist. And in 1989, the Exxon Valdez spilled, and I was all like up on my high horse. I even wrote in with soap, boycott Exxon, on the back of my GM Jimmy, which was an SUV. Now it looks like a tiny, tiny SUV, but it was an SUV nonetheless. And then I realized, oh my gosh, Alexandra, your car, you are the reason that that Exxon Valdez oil tanker was out there in the first place. So you should stop being a hypocrite, and you should start walking your talk. And I got my first electric car in 1990. And it was a Datsun that was converted in someone's garage, and it went 25 miles on a charge.
Wow.
I want to clarify for younger audiences that the Exxon Valdez was an oil tanker that spilled off the pristine waters of the Alaska shoreline. And so it devastated that shoreline. It was a big deal back then.
But after that first electric vehicle, from that moment on, that was it for you, right? You stuck with electric vehicles from that first car.
Yes, even though that first car only went 25 miles per charge, and it had lead acid batteries that I had to fill with water every week. And I had a very long extension cord, and that plugged in on a little, 110 outlet in my garage of my apartment building. But I fell in love with electric cars. Even then, it was smooth and quiet and had great pickup. So, yeah. And the first time that I drove the car, I actually ran out of juice. But it didn't deter me. And the reason I ran out of juice is because you have to, at least certainly back then, electric cars, you don't drive them like a gas car. You don't keep your foot on the accelerator so you can move forward. There's so much forward motion on an electric car that you don't need to have a heavy lead foot. You just tap, and I learned that quite quickly. So since then, I've hardly ever run out of juice, and certainly not with modern day cars.
Well, tell us a little bit about the EV1. How did you come to own one, or did you lease one?
Well, I heard about the EV1. It was much talked about in the environmental community, right? And it was after my first Datsun, I got a second car that went 50 miles per charge, but then I heard about the EV1 that got almost 100 miles per charge. The second incarnation of the EV1 got it like 120 with its Panasonic batteries, but the first EV1 was getting around just under 100, and it looked amazing. It was the only car out there that was built from the ground up to be an electric car. So it was built really aerodynamically, and I applied for it. Actually, you had to apply. There was quite a long process on the internet that you had to go through to apply or go into the dealership directly. And on the very first day that they were released to the public, which was in December 1996, I went to the dealership and picked up my car, which was car number 37. It was the first car leased. It was the lowest number car leased to the public. And it wasn't because I was so great. It was just because I picked dark forest green, and that happened to be a low number car. But yeah, so I was ecstatic. And it was like driving a rocket ship. It was such an amazingly high performance car.
And you could only really lease those cars, right?
Yes, you could only lease them. They did not sell them because GM did not, they were mandated to make these cars. So they made as few as possible, and they wanted to keep very tight control of them.
And so what happened when you eventually had to turn in your leased car?
Oh my gosh. Well, okay. So I had the car for 6 years, and when the California Air Resources Board decided that they weren't going to mandate that the top 8 car companies had to make some zero emission cars, then these car companies all decided, well, if we're not going to be mandated, we're not going to make them anymore. So they decided that they would not renew our leases. And I begged them. I called. I said, I will pay in advance. I will buy the car. Just let me keep it. And they said no. And they brought a tow truck to my house. And I do not like, I've never been a car fan, but I was very emotional when that car was taken away. And I wept. And I documented the whole thing. It's in my photo album. And it was a big loss, because that car, I felt, was a symbol of a future where maybe we could get off oil and solve so many of our national security or pollution problems.
Also, though, that car was the center of what seems like so much controversy, especially with GM. So take us back to March 2005 and a little thing called a protest that you were involved in.
Yes. So my car had to go back in 2000, I think it was 3 or 2, because I was the first day of leasing, right? So they pulled my car very early, and I moved into a Toyota RAV4, which was another car that they mandated Toyota to make these cars too, because it was a big seller in California. The top 8 car sellers had to make some zero emission cars. But I still mourned the EV1, and it was discovered that GM was crushing the EV1s that they were taking back from lessors, from drivers. And this was stunning, because the EV1 was such a marvel of technology, and it was the only car built from the ground up of any car company that was putting out electric cars there. And here GM was taking perfectly good cars and crushing them. And so somebody found out that 78 of them, of these EV1s that were being taken from drivers, were sitting in a lot in Burbank, California, waiting to be brought to a crusher in Arizona. And so protesters, a lot of drivers of electric cars, environmental protesters, technology buffs gathered in front of this facility and started a vigil, a 24/7 vigil to watch, to make sure that these cars were not removed to bring to the crusher. And I was one of those people who was there at the vigil and took on a daily 4-hour vigil where I would watch. And for 27 days, we ended up, that's like over 200 shifts we had to fill of people watching to make sure that the cars were not removed.
Obviously, though, this car meant so much to you, and it sounds like your heart really was with this. And so it makes sense that you and so many other people out there were making sure that these cars were not going to get crushed.
There was so much passion among so many of the early EV adopters because we saw this as a rollback. And not only a rollback environmentally, but also for national security reasons. The Iraq War had started, and that was clearly, oil was an issue in those problems in the Middle East. And of course, the cost of gasoline was going up also at the time. So it really seemed like it was corporate corruption or government corruption or what was going on, that these perfectly good cars that so many people wanted, but the car companies were saying people didn't want, why were they being crushed? And I just want to note that the EV1 being crushed got a lot of attention, and a documentary was made about the situation. But every single one of those car companies that had been mandated to make electric cars under the California Air Resources Board regulations crushed their cars. And because most of them had been leased to people, those car companies were able to take them back. There were maybe a few hundred of a couple car companies that didn't crush their cars because they had sold them to drivers. But it was just that the EV1 was such an amazing car that I guess there was more attention on that one.
And didn't you even try to put together some money, raise some money to purchase the cars? I heard that the group put together quite a lot of money to purchase all the vehicles, but GM would have none of it.
We raised $1.9 million. It's like $25,000 a car we were willing to pay. And no, GM rebuffed us right there, then and there. We were out there for 27 days at the vigil, and on the 27th day, and I happened to be actually on watch at that time, they started moving. A transport truck drove in, and they started moving the vehicles onto the transport truck. So we knew they were going to start removing cars and crushing them, and that was when the vigil turned into a civil disobedience and a protest.
And that's where your arrest comes in, correct?
Yes, that is. I had already committed that if they tried to remove the cars, that we would block the entrance and exit. And I was driving my RAV4 EV Toyota, and myself and another activist, Colette Devine, who also happens to be an actress. You know, actresses are really badass. And she was also an electric car driver. And we drove the car, and as the transport truck was leaving, we drove to stop the transport truck from leaving and blocked the driveway. For 2 hours, they sent 20 Burbank police over to try and get us out of the car. And finally, when they said that they were going to break the window, and I am I'm trained in peaceful civil disobedience. And so we agreed to get out, and we went to the Burbank jail. But what we had wanted was already accomplished, which was there was a lot of media there, and attention was being paid to the fact that these beautiful cars were being crushed needlessly, even though there were so many people who wanted to buy them.
So looking back, here we are, a couple of decades later, we have major car companies saying they're going to switch to all electric cars in several years. And you were arrested in a protest. I guess looking back, what do you think about all of that?
Oh gosh. I have been an activist since I was 7 when I first wrote to President Nixon and asked him to stop pollution. And I have to say that a lot of activism that we do we don't see any change in our lifetime. But this is the one issue where I really believe that the activists that were fighting for electric cars back in the early 2000s and the ones who were driving them in the 1990s and before, we really made a difference. And I believe that, and we have seen a change. So we're full of pride. And of course, I'm still in touch with my activist friends from then too. And we're all driving various EVs. When we talk to each other, the first thing we ask is, hey, what are you driving? Which is hilarious for me, who never cared about cars. And I only care about electric cars now to this day. Even though my very first movie was about a car. It was called Christine, and it was about it was a gas guzzler too. If I, 1957 Plymouth Fury, or maybe it was a 58. You see, I don't even know, even though I starred in that movie, because it was a gas car.
Well, and that's probably what drove you to EVs, right? Is the horror of dealing with Christine, the gas car.
That's right. That's right. Gas cars, they're a menace.
But ironically, you were also a GM spokesperson at one point, weren't you?
Oh my gosh, I know. And so we activists always gave GM a lot of credit for creating the EV1 in the first place. I mean, it was a spectacular car. I would park it if I was, driving around LA, and I would have to park it on the street to do errands. Whenever I came out, there would be people all around it looking at it and just fascinated by the technology and the beauty of the car and the novelty of it. And GM deserved that kind of attention. So in 2011, after An Inconvenient Truth by Al Gore had come out, and people started getting really more educated about climate change and how fossil fuels contributed to that, and gas prices were through the roof, went over $100 a barrel. It was shocking. And the war in Iraq had been going on for 7 years. In 2011, and then Tesla had also come out with a car too, and people were marveling at it. So now the big car companies sort of started thinking, well, maybe it is time for us to bring out these electric cars. And GM brought out the Chevy Volt, which was a plug-in hybrid, so that, normally, and your audience probably already knows this, but a regular hybrid like a Prius always uses gas, but a plug-in hybrid will use electricity and then gas. So you don't ever have to go into your gas tank if you stay within the range of the electric car, of the electric batteries in the car. And the Chevy Volt went about 45 miles on electric, which is more than enough for the average driver in the United States at that time, which was about 25 to 30 miles a day they drove. So it was more than enough. So GM came to me and asked if I would like to be the spokesperson for the Chevy Volt, because they felt that I was very credible because I had fought so hard for the EV1. And you got to give them credit, because I talked a lot of dirt about GM. It's true. Even though I love their car, I talked a lot about the bad stuff about the corporation, and they still came back to me and said, hey, would you be our spokesperson? And I said, yes, because I admire you for trying again. And, I'm not one to bear a grudge either. So I did drive a Chevy Volt for, I think 6 years, until I got the Chevy Bolt. So I'm still a Chevy GM driver. Yeah.
Well, and as a longtime activist, especially when it comes to electric vehicles, what do you think, seeing all of these car companies, major car companies, and the advancements they've made in technology, and the fact there is such a push from car companies, whether it's, hybrid, plug-in hybrid, all electric vehicles, what are your thoughts to see all of these advancements over the last 20 years?
I think it's fantastic. And I understand why car companies were so reluctant to adopt this new technology. They were losing money on the cars. And I think it was really up to the United States government to help subsidize them even more. And I still think the United States government needs to subsidize them, because the United States government gives such huge oil subsidies, and oil has been around for over 100 years. We need to support this new technology. And I think car companies need as much help with the cars and the infrastructure from the federal government, so that it can move forward, and so that we can, power our cars cleanly with solar panels. So there's many aspects of this that still need to be supported. We cannot abandon the car companies now just because, there's a lot on the road, and 1.2 million cars were sold last year that were electric. We have to keep subsidizing and supporting this new technology if it's really going to take hold.
Well, and we couldn't agree with you more. We want to thank you for your time today, Alexandra, and we hope to speak with you again soon.
Oh, you guys are so great. Thank you for spreading the EV word. Really appreciate it very, very much.
Well, thank you. You are a fabulous storyteller, Miss Alexandra Paul. Thank you.
That's so nice of you. You guys are great. You guys are great.
How about that?
Love it.
A Baywatch star right here on GreenCars, the podcast.
She is great. She is super awesome. Follow us at GreenCars HQ. Email us at thepodcast@greencars.com.